This episode is brought to you by Yolele, the revolutionary African foods company. Learn more at YOLELE.com.
This week's episode of Meat and Three is inspired by the reemergence of cicada brood 10. We're talking all about insects.
Some people are calling crickets the gateway bug because that's a great introduction to what edible insects is all about.
So we found detectable levels of cesium-137 in 68 of 122 total honey samples that we had.
What is that?
Is it tarantula?
No, what is it?
It's a tarantula.
Oh, and they're gonna eat it? No.
Listen to Meat and Three wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Pizza Quest. I'm Peter Reinhardt, a man on a never-ending search for the perfect pizza. This show is the audio version of the Pizza Talk YouTube series, where I engage in interesting conversations with some of the country's greatest pizza makers and other artisans. Thanks for joining me on this quest. Welcome to Pizza Talk. I'm Peter Reinhardt, and today I'm here with Ed Levine, the founder and creator of Serious Eats. Many of you know him through that. I know him first through this, Pizza, A Slice of Heaven, a book that came out around the same time as my book.
It's true.
And so we were kind of on this journey together. And Ed, I remember you then, after the books came out, you called me and told me about this website you were thinking about starting called, turned out being Serious Eats. And a whole lot has happened in the last 15 years since.
It's true. It's true. But yeah, you did. You contributed to Slice of Heaven, and back then, Peter, we were just two pizza obsessives, sort of early on in the pizza obsessive game.
That's right. Yeah, we were ahead of the curve. Everybody was always obsessed. We were the first ones talking about it.
Exactly. We weren't embarrassed to talk about it.
That's it. I know. And it's funny. The short piece I contributed to your book was a sort of like what happens when you move to a new city and you have to like set up your support network. You need a doctor and a dentist, and you need a pizzeria, and you need a Chinese restaurant. And so I wrote about finally after a little search, finding a local place that I love.
Yes, I remember.
And they have that up on their wall now at that pizzeria. And every time I go in there, they always remind me, thank you for that.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's funny. I love that book. And I love the way it came together, which was I wrote about half of it, and then about half it, I invited people like you and Nora Ephron and Calvin Trillin, like anybody I knew that might want to write something about pizza. And so it was sort of a pizza anthology, and it worked well, and it delved into history. And, I did do a lot of seminal research, I suppose you could call it. I delved into Trenton. I if you remember, I came up with the term pizza belt for all the cities along the ocean in the Northeast, where all the Southern Italians had come to settle and work in the factories. And the pizza belt, I think, went from DC, or I think it was Jersey, all the way up to New England. So and who knew what was going to happen to the world of pizza in the interim?
I know, like we were kind of creating the new vocabulary for pizza back then. In terms like, everyone knew about Neapolitan, but nobody knew exactly what it meant. Then there was Neapolitan, and then there was, then there was the Greek style, and there was this and we had to kind of come up with the terminology that other people then built on. Who knew that?
And it was fun, and then it inspired a whole bunch of people like Scott Wiener, and which I love. I love the fact that we're sort of paying it forward in the world of pizza, and we have brought many talented people to the public's attention, which I think is one of my favorite things to do. and in writing that book, I discovered Chris Bianco, and I discovered Anthony Mangieri, and I'm sure other people that had written about them, but it was really fun. And then, of course, I don't even know if you knew this, the first managing editor of Serious Eats was Adam Kuban,
Exactly.
who started, I would say, the first and probably the best pizza blog called Slice.
Yeah. In fact,
And
that was the reason why I didn't contribute to Serious Eats. When I saw what Adam was doing, I said, I can't keep up with this guy.
Right. And I met Adam right after the book came out. So it was like 2004, 2005, maybe. He was giving a tour to some of the Slice contributors, and he was into Tono's. And when I walked in to just get a pizza, they actually treated me like a celebrity. It was like the first time in my life that someone said, "There's Ed Levine." It was really funny. And then
the power of having a book.
Right. And so then he ended up, as I say, being my first hire at Serious Eats. So,
Wow.
and I bought his blog.
And now, of course, he's now becoming a major force in the bar pizza movement. He's talking about vocabulary, so he's bringing that concept.
Yes, and I don't know how often he's probably during the pandemic he's not doing it. But Margot's, which is his bar pizza pop-up, which he was doing at Emily for a while in Brooklyn. Right. It's great. And he has a day job. Like, I think he runs the website for NYC and Company, like the sort of Chamber of Commerce, arm of the New York City government. And he has a beautiful daughter. And that Adam became a first-rate pizza maker. Yeah. I think he's, how he did it though, Peter, is he worked weekends for Paulie G.
Like a lot of people, that was like a launch pad for a lot of folks.
Yeah. So this is after he'd left Serious Eats and he took this job. I think he stayed a long time. A lot of people stayed a long time. I tried to make it a fun place to work.
I'm curious about all that because you were early in the game before there were all these blogs and the social media thing had exploded. You were doing Serious Eats, and when you first told me about it, I wasn't sure if it was going to get any traction or not because we didn't have any models.
Neither did I.
So can you help with, and of course you had a whole life before all of this. If I'm not mistaken, you were an attorney. You did all sorts of things.
No, I wasn't. I was actually in the music business. I was never an attorney, and then I was in advertising briefly.
Oh, okay. Somehow
that's okay. Yes,
I just assumed that everybody in the pizza world started out as a doctor or a lawyer.
That's funny. Yeah, so I was, by most people's standards, a successful freelance food writer. I'd written 2 books about New York City non-restaurant food called New York Eats and New York Eats More, which came out in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then I wrote the pizza book, and I was a regular contributor to the Times. But as you know, but it was never the way I made my living, right? I was also a consultant, believe it or not, in the cable television business.
Wow.
And so if you have a regular source of income, that's the only way you can really be a freelance food writer, right? Just the numbers don't work.
Right. You need to have a day job. Yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the last things I did in the cable television universe was I developed an idea for a cable network called Gusto, which was going to be a non-recipe driven cable channel about the culture of food.
Yeah.
And so I did it for MTV Networks because I'd done a lot of non-food consulting for them.
Right.
And they looked like they were going to do it, and Comcast was going to finance it. I was already counting the money, and I had a whole programming grid. And then in 2005, I got a call from a guy I knew well who brought me into the project, who said, yeah, Comcast just pulled out. They don't want to do this, and we're not going to do it on our own. And I was like, I needed the license plate of the truck that hit me.
Yeah.
But what happened was, in doing the research for that channel, I became aware of the blogosphere and digital media. And what I figured out is you could move the decimal point over a whole bunch of places and launch a media vehicle. Because, to launch a cable network at the time, and now no one would launch a cable network, but it costs hundreds of millions of dollars before you get to break even, because you had to get distribution and you had to develop programming grid. And so once I realized, and I picked myself up off the floor after this channel was called Gusto, I was like, okay, well, what happens if I do this as a website? And I lucked out. I found some of the smartest people in what was then called the Web 2.0 world. Meg Hourahan, who is one of the founders of Blogger, the first blogging software, which was Google's first acquisition. I
remember that because a friend of mine was the founder of TypePad. TypePad, and they were hoping to be bought up by Google, and they got beaten by Blogger, and so she sold to somebody else, but not to Google.
Yeah, exactly. And then I was introduced to David Karp, this 18-year-old coding whiz who still wasn't shaving yet, and was a high school dropout, but was just an insanely talented coder. And he went on to found, now I'm blanking, the thing that Yahoo paid $2 million for, and now I'm blanking on what it's called. I'll remember. It was another sort of blogging. Oh, it was called Tumblr.
Tumblr, right.
Yeah, so Serious Eats we were going to use a content management system, a CMS, that he was writing.
Nope, I lost your sound.
We were going to license the Tumblr, what he was calling then Tumblr blogging, the content management system. And, okay, we'll license it to you, and then nobody else in the food space will have it. And then before I launched, I sort of had a falling out with some of my original partners, and Meg Hourahan we kept waiting for Tumblr to be finished, and he never finished it. And so finally I had to use off-the-shelf blogging software, and David and I parted ways in a very friendly way.
Yeah.
And then he went on to sell to form Tumblr, which he sold to Yahoo for $1 billion.
Yeah, in other words, he went on to become a billionaire, and the rest of us are working hard to make it happen.
Exactly. So, but anyway, I was very lucky that way. And the whole idea behind Serious Eats at the time was just, it was going to be sort of a town square for people who were passionate about food. So you might want to talk about a recipe, or the best way to make a pan pizza in an oven, or what's a smash burger.
Right.
And, it was sort of going to be what I wrote about before then, writ large. And it sort of stayed that way for a few years, and it was doing well because we were early, and I had the help of all these really talented people who really understood the web, or the Web 2.0 world as it existed then. And then I met through Adam Kenji Lopez Alt,
right?
And so Kenji wrote a couple of pieces for us, not recipes.
Right. Who is this guy, man?
But then I realized that we really did need recipes, right? And the next recipe I write will be my first. And so I said to Kenji, hey, you want to look over all the recipes that I'm going to assign people to write, and you can be our recipe czar. And he was still making $30 a story because that's all I could afford. It wasn't like I was going to the Hamptons by helicopter every weekend.
You were one of the few people paying anybody anything.
Exactly. So what happened was Kenji became Kenji on Serious Eats.
That's right.
And so it became much more of a recipe and technique site. And you got to give the people what they want. And clearly what they wanted was that kind of deep dive, which we're still known for to this day.
Right.
And, Kenji just took off. And, now he's obviously one of the biggest stars in the food world.
Yeah.
He had a natural affinity for social media in the early days of social media. We weren't even using Facebook. This was before Twitter. It was before Instagram. But he had a way to comfortably live his life online. And so we were actually late to social media, but Kenji was himself very early.
Right.
And he's a master at social media. And I say that as a high compliment because he's not one of these people who manipulates people.
Yeah. He just grasped what its potential was and how to use it.
So that Serious Eats became something I never imagined. And then, of course, the other thing that's weird, Peter, is when I started Serious Eats, Facebook had barely started to sell advertising. So I never thought that Facebook would be a competitor.
Right.
Like in 2004, when I think I wrote my first blog post, maybe I wrote it in 2005, I think Facebook sold $484,000 worth of advertising. Nothing. And if you ever saw the movie Social Network, that's borne out.
That's right.
And when I decided to sell Serious Eats in 2014, I put in the deck, or I put in my book, that they had sold $18 billion worth of advertising.
Yeah.
So that just gives you an indication of how much the landscape had changed for how do you support a website that's built on paying people to write really high quality content. And as we know now, it's a struggle. It's still a struggle because once people, and this is especially true in food, once people got used to not paying for good content,
right,
it's really hard to get them to switch.
Yeah. It's the whole landscape's so changed, and it happens so fast.
It happens so fast. And
even at one point in the Serious Eats early years, weren't there like regional versions?
Yes, we had Serious Eats Chicago, and
then you had it was the democratization of food writing. Everybody could be a food writer. Everybody could have an opinion, and everybody was like really, really hard on restaurants and chefs and kind of like trying to earn their bones, by being a tough guy.
I hired a Chicago editor, or I think is now a staffer at a food writing staffer at the Chicago Tribune. And I hired a couple of other people. Yeah, we had a Chicago site, and that was going to be our plan, was to roll out other cities. But that, as we found out, that didn't make sense for anyone. The only one it made sense for was Eater, because what they did was essentially hire a freelancer, pay him $1,000 a month to rewrite press releases and go to restaurant openings.
Wow.
And so that was and it worked for them, right? But it didn't work for us, so we had to abandon that
social
plan.
media influencers. Then at that point, yeah.
And so, you know, and we just became known. Everyone used to say, well, if you know, you call the website Serious Eats, but you write a lot about pizza and hamburgers. I'm like, yeah, like, haven't you ever heard of irony? You know, and really what it came from is when I was writing the pizza book, and someone would say, oh, you went to Phoenix, how was the pizza? And I'd say, oh man, I went to Pizza Bianco. That guy makes a serious slice. So that's how Serious Eats was named. But we became known for pizza and burgers, and that happened to be some of Kenji's passions too. And so that's sort of how it happened. And then it was a wild journey to bring it to Safe Harbor.
Well, look what's happened since then. All the serious chefs are now making burgers and pizza, right?
I know. It's weird.
So once again, you were ahead you were kind of the harbinger. And I think if anybody wants to know, you know, what they should be thinking about 5 or 10 years from now, and what's going to actually going to be profitable, ask Ed now what he's thinking about. And we'll get left behind, and somebody else will make a whole lot of money on it.
Right, exactly.
Well, this leads me to something, and I want to talk about this in our next segment because we got to wrap this one up. But you know, you have one of your most recent book is Serious Eater, right?
Mm-hmm.
A food lover's perilous quest for pizza and redemption. So when we come back, I'd like to hear more about that. We want to see about
for sure.
Want to talk about where everything's going, and I want to hear about this. I know you're coming to us today from Martha's Vineyard. You're out on the island, and I want to hear about this great pizza place that you found on the island.
Yeah, I can't wait to tell you about it.
All right, so join us in part 2 with Ed Levine, founder of Serious Eats, Pizza, A Slice of Heaven, and now Serious Eater. Again, a food lover's perilous quest for pizza and redemption. We'll be right back on Pizza Talk. See you soon. Stick around for more Pizza Quest after a word from our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Yolele, a revolutionary African foods company based in Brooklyn, New York. Yolele was founded by Senegalese chef, activist, and cookbook author Pierre Thiam. Yolele creates income opportunities for smallholder farming communities, supports their sustainable farming practices, and shares Africa's ingredients and cuisines with the world, starting with fonio. Fonio is a delicious, nutrient-dense, gluten-free ancient West African grain. Fonio is also drought-resistant, so it's good for the planet. Yolele is creating a market for fonio and other African crops grown under resilient farming systems to foster a more biodiverse, drought-tolerant landscape across West Africa. Try Yolele's fonio, quick-cooking fonio pilafs, and new fonio chips, boldly flavored with the ingredients and flavors of West Africa. Sign up for their newsletter for recipes, notes from the field, and culinary discourse, and get a free bag of fonio with your next order of $32 or more. Learn more at yolele.com. That's YOLELE.com.
Welcome back to Pizza Talk. I'm with Ed Levine. In part 1, we had a nice conversation sort of about a recap of how Serious Eats came into being and some anecdotes of that time, some of the great writers who were launched by Serious Eats, and of course your seminal book on pizza, A Slice of Heaven, which came out, it's hard to believe, 15, 16 years ago.
I know, it's crazy.
And in fact, Serious Eats launched about then, and now all of a sudden it's like, we were just talking about how that's kind of like the Gutenberg area. So much has happened in 15 years.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. When I wrote the book that we talked about in the last episode, Serious Eater, which was sort of about my quest to just keep Serious Eats alive, you know, that I had no idea. As a first-time entrepreneur, you live off willful naivete. You know, it's the only thing.
That's right.
It's and some combination of unbridled optimism and craziness.
Yeah,
you know?
because if people try to tell you the reality, then you wouldn't do it. So you just have to like do it blindly.
You're 100% right. I have a friend who's a film director, really successful film director. And I said, Joel, like, why didn't you tell me how hard this was going to be?
Yeah.
And he said the same thing you just said. He said, because you would have never done it.
That's
and
right.
You seemed quite determined.
Yeah. So better to try, and every once in a while somebody's going to succeed, and somehow you pulled it out. So Serious Eater, your new book, is really about that journey, about how you made it happen, and kept it alive.
Yeah, and you know, I didn't write it to be a cautionary tale, you know, because it did have a happy ending. I did land. I did guide the ship to a safe harbor.
Yeah, you had an exit strategy.
But it was so hard. And what I didn't realize is when you do something like that and you go all in, you don't have no idea what you're risking. You know, like what pressure I was putting on my marriage. You know, I have the greatest wife in the world, a really successful literary agent. And, you know, when you have to keep going to her to borrow money, because the only way a small business can borrow money is to personally guarantee it.
Yeah.
So then I'd say, oh, they don't want our apartment. And you're like, I had no idea if they wanted our apartment or not. You know, it's like, and so you go with blinders on, because I at a certain point, there was no difference between the business and me. You know, like I was Serious Eats and Serious Eats was me.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I mean, the book is a real roller coaster ride. And I learned a lot about a lot of things. And I hope it doesn't discourage people from following their passions, but they just have to realize that you can follow your passions, but it does come at a cost.
What are some of the things that you actually did learn in your journey? It's things that you could pass up without, you know, people should get the book and read the whole story, but a couple little things that you could
Sure.
yours.
You know, for one, you know, I believe that I was always, people say, oh, it's a great time to be raising money. So I would raise money from it was literally friends and family financing. And every time I tried to go, and then after a while, the friends and family would say, you should get some institutional money. And then I'd try to get institutional money, and they'd be like, this is way too speculative for us.
Wow. Yeah.
And the only way you could get even friends and family money is you have to write a business plan, which we all know is mostly a work of fiction.
Right.
And so I remember, and I talk about this in the book, it's like, oh, in year 3, we were going to be up to $10 million in advertising sales. And it'd be like, what was I thinking?
Yeah. Like, how do you convert a dream into beans?
Exactly. And there's so many things like that. So one of the lessons is, don't start your business with, you have to have as much capital as you do passion, you know, because people would say, oh, you're supposed to have 3 months run rate in the bank. And I think at the most I had 1 month, you know, and most of the time I had 2 weeks, you know, and more than once, Peter, I had no weeks,
Holy
you know, and I had to forego taking a salary because I didn't want to furlough anybody else's salary because I knew they would never come back. You know, it's like they'd start looking for work, as you or I would do if that happened to you. And so, but my wife stood by me through thick and thin. So there's another lesson. Have a fantastic partner.
Yeah.
Life partner, you know, because I just had no idea. And she didn't either, although she's built a very successful literary agency, but she never took other people's money. once you take other people's money, even if they're friends, everything changes.
Yeah.
Everything changes. So, I mean, look, and people now can start businesses if they understand social media. They can start businesses with not a lot of money, but it's obviously becoming very crowded, and we can argue whether those businesses that are created by influencers are anything we would regard as worthy of examination, but that's the reality, and look, there are so many, TikTok is creating millionaires, and all these places are creating millionaires, and we can scoff at them, but it's very real.
Well, as somebody who has a good track record for seeing kind of like what's ahead, what's possible out there, risk or no risk, what are some of the things that you see, like everything's happening so fast now. So like we said, 15 years ago, something that was cutting edge was already a dinosaur. So what are the next cutting edge things that you might want to stay alert to?
So in the pizza world, and you've probably seen this, in Charlotte, people do pop-ups and start businesses like the business that I started to tell you about on Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah, which we're going to talk about.
And with virtually no startup capital, a few $1,000s of personal savings or a loan from your parents or a sibling or whatever. So this woman, Nina Levine, was a really good cook. She grew up on the vineyard. She ended up working at serious restaurants in Portland, Maine, and then Charleston.
Charleston, right? Where our friend Glenn Roberts knew her in Charleston.
Right.
That's right.
And she just decided she wanted to come back to the vineyard, and she was going to build a pizza oven, a beautiful wood-burning pizza oven. Had she ever, I don't think she'd ever even worked a pizza station before. Not clear to me.
Had she worked a pizza station, she may not have gone forward with this.
Yes, exactly. And so, I guess through watching YouTube videos, she built this gorgeous oven. And I was up here when the farmer's market started, and I see this beautiful oven. And then I order, she was selling a breakfast pizza and a margarita. So I ordered one of everything the way I always do. And
because you are, after all, a serious eater.
Right. and I was like, damn, this is really good pizza. Like really good pizza. As you know, I ate 1,000 slices of pizza in the year that I wrote A Slice of Heaven. And so I literally went up to them and I said, we need to figure out a way to sustain your business up here. We need your pizza up here because I'm going to be up here for a while. So I need you to last.
Stay in business.
So literally, I'm not kidding. I said, let's get together. I've got some ideas for you. So I go to this house in one of the towns on Martha's Vineyard, Vineyard Haven. She and her partner were had baked some bread that morning. The bread was world class. And we sat down at a picnic table, properly socially distanced.
Yeah.
And, she just said, okay, well, we're going to do this. We're doing the 2 farmers markets. We can make 60 pizzas. We don't have any place to proof our dough. We don't have a walk-in, right. So we're totally making this up. But she was dead serious. And I could tell, not just from the pizza, even the bread they served was world-class bread. I was like, these people are really good cooks. As you know, that's what's happened. That's what's happened, Peter, the time since you started, and you started, it's like there are serious chefs who are now devoting themselves to pizza. And you ask me what's coming next. A pizza truck is a way to start a business, where you can at least make, you're not gonna make enough money to retire.
Yes.
But she makes and she sells 60 pizzas for somewhere between $15 and $20. And she's got 2 or 3 people working for her, but just on the market days. She makes her dough, and they're figuring out. She does a bunch of parties for 10 people because that's the biggest gathering you can have up here during the pandemic. And I have some ideas for places she can set up the truck, the mobile oven after Labor Day.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what's happening. And
that's amazing because she was in the right place at the right time to meet somebody like you who had all this perspective, who can help her get to the next one.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't think I've had to offer her that much help. I've offered her a little bit of advice, which she seems to be happy to take. But she has good instincts, and she makes great pizza. And our mutual, or about to be mutual friend, Glenn Roberts from Anson Mills, knew about her.
Yeah. Because
Glenn's wife, and I guess Glenn, to the extent that he has any full-time domicile, it's in Chilmark. Or he may have a house somewhere else.
On the island, yeah.
Yeah. So his wife, Kay Rentschler, who used to be the test kitchen director, right, at Cooks Illustrated, and wrote recipes for the Times as a freelancer. So she's up here year round, and he knew about Nina. And so I think the thing to do is to really, instead of, everybody in Silicon Valley thinks big. They think about, how do I scale? How do I make $1 billion? Like, I'm reading the Elizabeth Theranos book, Bad Blood.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
She started that business as an undergraduate at Stanford. And the savviest venture capitalists in Palo Alto on Sand Hill Road, which is where they're all located, invested hundreds of millions of dollars. And it was a total scam. And so Nina is sort of taking the opposite approach, right? She's like, how do I put one foot in front of the other? Like, I'm going to build this oven. I know it's going to cost me a lot of time, but I don't have the money to have someone come and build it for me. So she built the oven, and she just practiced. I'm sure she made a lot of bad pizza in the beginning for herself and her friends, like anybody. It's like the first pancake.
If there really is such a thing as a bad pizza, I always feel like there's just good and there's very good.
That's true, because even bad pizza is melted cheese on bread.
That's right.
So I think there is a lesson to be learned there.
Yeah. It's funny because it is kind of a step back. The way things used to happen, where you start small and you bootstrap your way up, and then if you're lucky, it grows.
Exactly. It's like in the music business, which I was in. The star-making machinery took over, right? But before there was star-making machinery making everybody a rock and roll star or have fantasies about being,
right,
there were musicians who were community-based.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Who, my friend at college ended up getting a grant to study Cajun music in southwestern Louisiana.
Huh? And
he started, and he turned me on to the Balfa Brothers, this famous Cajun band. They all had day jobs. And then on weekends, they'd play at dance halls in Cajun country. And they didn't regard themselves as failures. Right? It's like they have a day job, and then they get to do what they love, and that's a pretty good life. And I think there's a lesson to be learned there.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things, one of our friends and sponsors of Pizza Quest actually, Fire Within makes these mobile wood-fired ovens. And during the pandemic, I was talking to Ajit Dharma, the owner of the company, recently, and he said a lot of people have been coming to them because they're recognizing an opportunity to get in at a very affordable level to get and have their own business, kind of like,
Yes.
what Nina's doing. But it comes with it's already set to go. You've got your oven on wheels. All you have to do is hook it up to your car.
Yeah, and you would know this. It would seem like you, if you had the time, or someone could do what Stephen Racklin has done for barbecue, or Mike Mills' daughter from 17th Street Barbecue.
Yeah.
They do these, and my friend Brian Polson, who's a great chef in Detroit, does these charcuterie workshops. He wrote the charcuterie book and the salumi book with Michael Ruhlman. He's a great cook. You would love him, and he's a great guy. And he started doing these charcuterie workshops, for 10 people. And as you know, tons of chefs and line cooks would wanted to take them because they all want to know how to make that stuff without killing people.
And now you can't even do a live class like that, but it's all gone on to Zoom or onto, the internet. And so there's these virtual classes now.
Yeah. And so I don't know if there's anyone doing it in pizza, but
who is our friend Scott Wiener is doing among a number of people, but he's got weekly classes and actually he's selling tickets and he limits how many people can subscribe and it's working for him.
I love Scott, man. Scott, he always says that my book was his inspiration, but
that's true. When I saw you before Scott Wiener had the New York pizza tour business going, you did a pizza tour at a conference that I went to in New York City that PMQ Magazine hosted a big.
Oh yeah.
And you took out a group of people on a pizza crawl.
Yeah.
And we went to John's and we went to I'm not sure where else.
Probably Lombardi's when it was still good.
That's right. And you had like a couple places you took us to and gave us all the backstory.
Yeah, and Scott is. I still do these pizza tours. I still do occasional pizza tours for charity. I'm very involved with this charity called the Association of Benefit Children. It's an amazing charity, ABC. And I put on a buffet dinner, and we have a bunch of auction items. And one of the auction items is that Scott and I will do a pizza tour together on one of his buses.
That's nice.
And people pay $15,000 to eat 6 slices of pizza with me and Scott.
There you go. Yeah. Well, that's it. Talk about a business that who would have thought that kind of a college hobby of Scott's to know about pizza would turn into this very successful and important business. He's now an influencer in the pizza world.
Right. And you know what? Scott is a great hustler.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the best sense of the word.
Yeah, he's an entrepreneur in the true spirit. Yeah.
No, and he's also not, he's just a real human being, and he regards it as nothing short of a miracle that he can make his living through his passion.
Doing something that he loves. Well, as long as we're shouting out charities, and please tell us the name again of the charity that you were.
It's called the Association to Benefit Children. ABC. They have a preschool. They have it's a-b-c.org. They have this amazing preschool. They've really rescued thousands of families in New York.
Wow.
They even had they did have a culinary portion of their programming called Baked in the Hood. I think that's gone by the wayside, but they do so much work on behalf of at-risk families in New York.
ABC, all right.
They take a really holistic approach. They help them find housing. It's this amazing woman, Gretchen Buckenhole, started it. I don't know, must be 20 years ago.
Thank you for that. And I mentioned that because Scott also has been doing charitable work. And he started a
Slice Out Hunger.
Called Slice Out Hunger, which we've been talking about, because every week Scott has his Box of the Week segment on Pizza Talk. And so 2 worthy charities to get people who are watching, please check them out, support them in any way you can.
Yeah, for sure.
And,
For sure.
and before we run out of time,
Yeah.
there's two things that, first of all, I want to say. Right, already we started talking about the future, and it didn't get futuristic. It got kind of like, let's go retro on this, because two takeaways for me is, number one, think small, not big. Go back to kind of basics on this and think about bootstrapping something the old-fashioned way, something that could work. And also, well, there was a second takeaway, and I've just
actually, I don't know if I really elaborate on the second takeaway, which is you have to combine that with a working knowledge of social media. Because and so it is a back to the future thing in one way, but in another way, look, Adam was not a great coder the way David Karp was from Tumblr, but he was a good coder. And he coded enough so that he built Slice, which I bought from him. But, when he puts, and he's very good on social media, when he puts Margot pop-up pizza tickets on sale, they sell out in 5 minutes.
And Margot's is Adam Kuban's bar pizza pop-up.
Bar pizza pop-up.
That's another takeaway that I got, is that pop-ups are still are relevant. It's they've been hot for a couple of years now, but it's a great way to kind of launch. It's a launching pad.
Absolutely. And then whatever happens, whether you end up with a bricks and mortar place or not. And it's not that pop-ups are instant path to nirvana and success, but they are a really important thing. But the way you make pop-ups successful is by understanding. So Nina, and the name of her pizzeria is Stony Hill.
Stony Hill, on Martha's Vineyard, Stony Hill Pizza. And in fact, I heard from Nina, by the way, and we're going to try to get her on. We're going to have a show.
Good. She's great. She's great. Very modest. When I told her that, I said, "Oh, you might hear from Peter Reinhardt." She said, "I don't know if I barely just started making pizza, but as you know, you can tell just by talking to people how good their pizza is going to be."
Well, we want to see. I want to see one of her pizzas, because she has one, I think, that either you or Glenn told me about, with corn and
corn and shiitakes, delicious.
Corn and shiitake pizza. Yeah. So Nina, we're going to Nina Levin on at some point. We're going to get her on. And again, a good example of taking a mobile oven and starting a business. And then I want to, we're just coming to the end of our time. I want to play a game with you that you do on your podcast.
Oh, no. And I forgot you told me you were going to do this, and I forgot.
Your podcast is called Special Sauce, right?
Right.
Special Sauce. And one of these days I'm hoping to be a guest on your podcast, and you can throw this back at me. But I love this idea that you do, which is essentially, who would you have, let's say 4 people that you would want to have at your last dinner, that if you could orchestrate the ideal dinner evening, who would you want to have and why?
Yeah. It's a tough one.
Or it's too limiting, but that's what makes it fun.
And no family allowed. So I would say that, I wrote about my friend who just died at the age of 92, this great saxophone player named Jimmy Heath.
Oh, yeah.
Who was part of one of the first families of jazz, the Heath brothers. Percy Heath was in the Modern Jazz Quartet. And Jimmy was unbelievably funny and smart and down to earth, and had been through a lot in his life, and ended up a tenure-chaired professor at Queens College teaching jazz.
Wow.
And he just taught me so much about how to live a creative life with dignity. And I so appreciated that, and he gave me saxophone lessons when I didn't even know how to put together a saxophone.
Oh, wow.
And he was great company. He was hilarious. And with a great mastery of the English language, was a master punster.
Wow. And
so I would say I would have Jimmy would be one of the people I would have at my last supper. I don't want to say Michelle Obama because too many people told me Michelle Obama, so I'm not going to say Michelle Obama.
She's going to get tired of eating.
Yeah, but I do, and this is someone I never did meet. I mean, you have to have. I mean, after hearing, don't you think we have to have John Lewis at the Last Supper? I mean,
he jumps to the front of a lot of lists right now. Yeah, I mean, the more you learn about the guy, the more you fall in love with him.
Yeah, and now I have two more, and I'm gonna pick two women, and again, someone like Nina Simone would be amazing to have.
North Carolina girl, by the way.
What?
She's a North Carolina girl.
Yeah. And I have learned a lot about her. And I used to work for a concert production company. We used to do Nina Simone concerts.
Wow.
And she was not a very easy person to deal with. She had a lot of demons.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Not substance related, but
yeah.
And she was very angry. And I had another guest on Special Sauce, and Alexander Small, who's a chef in Harlem, and he said and he knew Nina. He hung out with Nina. And he said, Nina was first and foremost angry because that she was a Black woman. She would never be recognized for the brilliant classical pianist she was. Mm-hmm. Did you know that Nina Simone was a brilliant classical piano player?
No, I did not.
I had no idea. So, I think I have to have Nina Simone.
That would be cool.
And the fourth person, because I'm the son of two Communist Party, members in the 30s. I'm a red diaper baby.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know. I think maybe Rosa Parks, it's like that. And that would be an awesome dinner, wouldn't it?
It would be a great dinner. Holy cow.
So
you got John Lewis, Nina Simone, and Rosa Parks.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Heath. So who's going to be the chef for that dinner?
Oh, man. I don't know. It might be you, dude. It might be you.
I don't know.
Because we have to have pizza.
Yeah, well, that's true. Although I could see some pretty good soul food at that dinner.
For sure. All kinds of food, man.
Well, Ed, it's been great. And I've been working on my list ever since I heard you do that, that play that game on yours. I've been thinking about home guys. So I'm going to tell you mine later. And,
all right.
Because it's hard. You start thinking about it, and
I know. I know. Some people really get annoyed. They go, "Why didn't you tell me you were going to ask me this?"
Yeah. But it's kind of fun. But it would be kind of cool if you could do that. Like every night, get 4 people of that caliber, and every night have a salon and have those kind of dinners or lunches or anything. Yeah, it would be kind of cool. So thank you for playing that with me, and thank you for all the work you've done. You've been, a great ambassador for pizza, but also for the food community in general. Serious Eats was a major influential. What do you call it? It was innovative at its time, and now
it's like, and now we're thought of as the establishment.
I know, and but all the things that have come as a result of that. Thank you for that. I've got your new book on order, so I'm looking forward to reading the story.
Oh, good. I think you'll like it. It's a good yarn. And it's true.
Well, that's it. And so, folks, check that book out. You can order it, from any site or any bookstore. Ed Levine, thank you again for being on Pizza Talk today with us and for all you've done.
My pleasure. Likewise. Great to talk to you, Peter.
And for telling me about Nina's place, too.
Stony Hill.
Yeah. So thanks so much.
All right, man.
Great day. And I know you're getting battened down for the hurricane coming through.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Appreciate it, man.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye. And join us on Pizza Talk next time, everybody. Thank you. Pizza Quest is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org, and connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at heritage_radio. You can also find us at facebook.com/Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is a non-profit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, and more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be a part of the food world's most innovative community? Subscribe to the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join the HRN family by becoming a member. Thanks for listening.